Okay, everyone, I think we're going to get started with the webinar now. There are a few people who are still on their way in, so we'll get started just so we can keep the time. So I just want to say hello and welcome to this Interactive Biodiversity Index exchange session. A big thank you for registering for the webinar, and also like to say a huge thank you to Richard Moore and Janet Jackson from the University of Northampton for hosting this webinar. This was actually, the idea for this session came from a conference session at the 2013 EAUC conference where Richard and Janet presented this as a session that she exhibited. So hopefully some of you may have seen this in the past. But that was a really popular session, so we wanted to make it available so that more people could learn more about the index. So a quick intro to me. My name's Lisa. I'm the Membership Services Manager at the EAUC. And as many of you know, the EAUC delivers the Sustainability Exchange, which is funded by HESCI and led by Staffordshire University. Many of you have probably sat in on a few exchanges before, but they are basically free lunchtime webinars on a variety of different topics. And we've run quite a few now, and they're all available on the Sustainability Exchange. We're all recorded and you can view them at any time. So if you have missed them in the past, please just go and have a look and you can view them all there. Anyone can host a webinar, so if you have something you want to share or you have an idea that you would like to learn more about, then let us know and we can get it all arranged and sorted. Quick bit of housekeeping, hopefully you can all hear me. If you're having trouble, send me a message in the chat box. If you don't have a microphone, that's absolutely fine. You can use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to send me any messages, and when we get to the questions, you can put your questions in there. Quick item on questions. If we save the questions to the end, we've got about 10 minutes at the end that we can go through some questions. So do put them in the chat box. If you think of anything throughout, add it in and I'll make sure that it's asked at the end. As I mentioned before, the webinar is recorded, so about an hour, 2 hours after the end of the webinar, it will be available on the Sustainability Exchange to share or view. And we'll also be sending you a quick survey at the end to capture any ideas that you have for future webinars and to let us know what you thought of this webinar today. So that's it from me. So I'm now going to hand over to Richard and Janet to start the webinar. So over to you, Richard. I've unmuted you so you can go for it.
Good afternoon. Right, well, thank you for inviting us to be involved in this webinar. I think the way we're going to run this, Dr. Janet Jackson is going to give a sort of presentation that I think you can see on screen at the moment, and then I'll sort of talk through the actual Biodiversity Index tool after she's done that. So maybe Janet's presentation first, and then perhaps questions, and then I can go through my presentation. So thank you, Janet.
Okay, hello everybody. Well, to start off really about the outcome of a project that was funded by HESCI over the last 18 months is this Biodiversity Index tool. And the aim of this tool really is to give us something that we can raise the bar in terms of how we can plan and enhance biodiversity on university campuses. So the tool is interactive, it's all-encompassing and self-contained, and it's designed to enable organisations to quickly add data in and sort of really just get a total figure that may relate to biodiversity. And then this index value is also enabling you to think about biodiversity in a different way that can happen before in the past. And look at ways you can enhance biodiversity with simple, cost-effective measures. As I said, this was developed as a team approach, really. There's a few of us that were involved in the development of this tool, and it's now become a speed project. So what is biodiversity? That's a question that I hear a lot. So many people struggle with the concept of biodiversity because really it's all-encompassing. It encompasses species diversity, but also diversity of ecosystem functions and the environmental aspects of biodiversity as well. So measuring it, measuring biodiversity as a true value is a very complex matter. This tool is really designed to simplify the assessment of biodiversity, we've made some big assumptions really about texture and structure of vegetation and how that might end up reflecting biodiversity values through your surveys. But the higher the value of the index is really indicating more complexity within the habitat that you surveyed. So the higher score represents there may be more species present and thus more biodiverse. So why is this important? Well, in fact, many people may be familiar with the concept of sustainable development, the agreements made at Rio de Janeiro in 1992. But central to that principle of sustainable development is the Convention of Biological Diversity. And this has had a review recently with the United Nations, and they've declared that 2011 to 2020 is the decade of biodiversity, when we need to actually make a difference. And the vision really they created was that, by 2050, society will value biodiversity and want to conserve, restore and use it wisely. And society will also appreciate our interconnectedness with maintaining a healthy planet and the benefits that we get from that. Main mission is really to halt the loss of biodiversity, because we know that through development, through urbanisation, we've lost biodiversity at an alarming rate over the last 60 years. The UK government has signed up to these international agreements, and through recent white paper, Natural Truth, Restoring the Value of Nature, there have been other documents produced as well. DEFRA have taken the lead in looking at using ecosystem assessment and ecosystem services as a technique to ensure that we use natural capital more sensibly and enhance biodiversity, right down to the local level. Now, ecosystem services is another sort of complicated concept. It's about, again, it's all encompassing. It's really about appreciating what natural capital and nature does for us as humans living on this planet. So we get provided with water and food and fresh air and climatic control through natural environment. We also can use nature to help us regulate flooding, regulate the quality of water in our rivers, and also regulate air pollution too. So we have these regulating services. There's another section here on this wheel that you can see on the screen called cultural services. And these are the things that we perhaps may take for granted in terms of aesthetics, in terms of recreation, being outdoors. And all these elements within the cultural section of the wheel is thought to actually contribute to our quality of life and our health and well-being. And then shortly after, the stewardship and habitat, and the supporting element there has biodiversity. And biodiversity is very closely connected with this cultural connection to our landscape. So these elements within the wheel are all systems and processes of our natural environment. So if we think about biodiversity, the main loss of biodiversity is because we have undervalued it in the past. And we've also disconnected with some of these ecosystem services, like some children don't know where food comes from, or can't identify difference in a bumblebee and a honeybee. And these impacts have happened over time, and the cumulative impact is starting to actually deplete biodiversity dramatically. So what the United Nations and many experts agree is that we need to develop new approaches, new adaptive management approaches, to seek opportunities to help biodiversity recover, create new opportunities for biodiversity to happen. And information is critical to enable these right management decisions. So here we've got some photographs of the university campus at University of Northampton. This is our park campus. And very often during open days, graduation ceremonies, parents will say, "Oh, it's a lovely green campus." And to look at it, it's very green and aesthetically pleasing. But if we look closer, then if we start to examine the biodiversity value of some of these green spaces on our campus site, they might be quite limited. We have green amenity grassland, which we've protected for absorbing rainwater and infiltration. And we have green bushes, which may provide habitat for birds and insects and mammals and some food resources. But there's limited biodiversity value in some of these green spaces. So how can we improve them? And through the SEED project, we started to examine our campus environments more closely. This is our other campus at Avenue, St George's Avenue. And here we've got a survey, a results of a survey, where we looked more closely at the green spaces within quite an urban setting. And the bright light green shows grasslands that have more than 5 species within them. And also we've got a purple area to the left, which has sort of a higher biodiversity value because it's tall grasslands, and it also has more than 5 species. So this is the basis of the tool areas. How can we actually highlight which areas of campus is better in terms of biodiversity, and what aspects of campus could be improved biodiversity value? And the way our thinking was developing was that many organisations now today are increasing their interest in their overall impact on the environment, and increasingly biodiversity is considered part of corporate social responsibility equation. In fact, many larger companies that we work with and in the public sector are now specifically asking for ways to illustrate that they are improving biodiversity. One example is that we were working with a sandwich maker, and it had a contract with Marks and Spencer. Marks and Spencer has this proviso that their suppliers are addressing biodiversity issues. The sandwich maker said, well, we don't really want to attract wildlife because we don't want wildlife in our sandwiches. And so it's really about problem solving and thinking a bit outside the box. And so what we encouraged them to do was to install bird boxes and bat boxes so that there could be some insect control around their building. So, you know, in the summer when the doors are open, we've also got screens, but if they can reduce that insect nuisance, then that's a positive outcome and a biodiversity benefit. So in terms of biodiversity index, we're making it freely available to higher education institutions and schools as well. But we want to target businesses too. And really we want to raise people's awareness of biodiversity on their sites, also get them to think about how they can improve biodiversity and capture wildlife. And we consider that under the convention of biodiversity that there's a more ethical responsibility really, and we need to think about how we can make not just sites more biodiverse, but also reconnect the ecosystem so to make ourselves more resilient to future uncertainty. And this slide is just illustrating connectivity really in terms of in isolation. So to the north of it, you see there's the map. The north of the site, this is Park Campus, the first one I showed you earlier, and then to the south is Avenue Campus, a more urban site, right next to a large green space. In between, we've got a number of schools. So if we rolled out the Biodiversity Index tool to all these schools that are neighbouring us, and then also approach these business parks, we've ended up with a sort of a wider landscape impact potential biodiversity. And many organisms require habitats over a much larger stage and scale, rather than just a footprint of an individual business or campus. So the Biodiversity Index tools, it will enable you to capture information about your site. On the tool website, there is a tutorial to help you get through the process and method of surveying and entering data, but we can offer training for that as well. And it's a magic website because it has a sort of a series of algorithms behind the calculation, which will automatically calculate your benchmark biodiversity index. In that site as well, that that data will transfer automatically to a very tracked interval report, and there are links and advice to further information and to other organisations. The science behind the index really is about capturing the complexity of habitat, the potential complexity of habitat. So we've used a number of different vegetation types, a number of different plant types as well. So the vegetation type is about structure, in terms of, is it a tree, is it a pond, or is it a grassland? The number of different plants is really about counting the different leaf shapes within that particular habitat type. And then we've got a structural variation incorporating the calculation, which captures the complexity and structure of that habitat. So what we've used is a score that is similar in terms of calculation as the Shannon Diversity Index, which is an index that's been used quite a lot in terms of biodiversity and wildlife evaluation. The score is meaningless unless you use it as a benchmark, and then you can see how that score compares year on year as you improve biodiversity on the site and increase the texture and complexity of habitats on site. So it's a comparative score. You may use it to compare other sites or other universities or different campuses, so you can use it comparatively. So who are we aiming this tool at? Well, we're aiming it at non-experts. You don't need to have any in-depth ecological knowledge to use this tool. It's been designed so that anybody can have a go at using it. So we're aiming at sustainability managers, environmental managers, people working in estates or facilities. We want to encourage further education and schools to use this tool, and perhaps develop it into STEM activities to get kids involved in sort of evaluating biodiversity too. And of course, we want to encourage university lecturers, students. I know somebody at Warwick University has got a student this year working on tools on their site as a participation project. So we want to encourage that too. So the added benefit of using the tool and getting involved with this assessment is that you can actually start formulating a biodiversity action plan. What we had questions before about how is this different to, say, a phase 1 habitat survey. Well, if you commission a phase 1 habitat survey, you end up with a report, and then that report might end up on your shelf. This index is a value that you can use to create actions on. The website itself identifies a range of activities that can enhance biodiversity on your site, and the reporting method that we've created also provides you with an evidence base that you can use to set your corporate social responsibility goals and to fulfill your obligations in terms of compliance. Also, what we want to encourage biodiversity, so it also makes a better place for staff and students on site. So lastly, really, the outcomes of the tool is that we expect, or we hope, that there will be a higher appreciation of existing biodiversity areas. So you'll be able to map and appreciate which areas are more complex and provide habitats for other wildlife. We want to stop attrition. We want to prevent further loss of biodiversity in the future and promote the possibility of creating new areas, promote opportunities for actually thinking creatively about biodiversity on the site. And in the wider landscape, spatially, we want to actually encourage people to think beyond their boundaries and facilitate this corridor of connectivity in the wider landscape. This all really is about improving the chances of species survival in the future. As we talked about resilience before, we don't know about climate change and the impact that will have, and we don't know what impact that will have on biodiversity. Ultimately, when we roll it out to industry, we want to actually achieve some higher standards for biodiversity across the business world and also in the wider society. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope I haven't spoken too quickly. We're going to take questions, I think, next.
Does anyone have any questions at this point? If you don't have a microphone, just type like any questions you may have in the chat box, or if you do have a microphone, just put yes in the chat box and I'll go and unmute you. I guess the first question for me is, it might be a really stupid question, but is the tool completely free? Is it a funded project? How does it work? Can anyone sign in?
It's currently free to higher education institutions. It was funded by HESI. So if you've got an ac.uk email address, you can register for free.
Fantastic, great. Well, we'll get to see it in a minute. Just coming to a question coming through from Rosie. She said this sounds like a great tool. Can you tell me how it's been received by IEEM or IEMA? Sorry, I don't know what the acronym IEEM Institute. I'm not sure. So has it been received by either of these, Janet? IEMA or IEEM?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we're just rolling out the tool literally over the last few months, so it's still very new. And we will be looking for getting accreditation by sub-professional organisations.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, the Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management. It's a new one on me. Thanks, Rosie, for clarifying that. That's great. That's something we'll be doing in the future. That's great. So how long has the index actually been around for? Sorry, if this is like infringing on your presentation, Richard.
No, it's fine. I will answer some of the questions as well, I think. It was launched at the EAUC conference on the 17th or 18th of April. So, I mean, as Janet said, it's only been out for a couple of months, really. And yeah, we've already sort of sat down and discussed, you know, should we approach IEM and sort of go through getting some form of accreditation, because it's not trying to replace things like phase 1 survey. It's trying to add value to sort of broaden out the number of organisations that are going to do something about biodiversity that currently don't do. That's the intention.
Okay, great. I don't think there's any more questions for now, but then obviously we're going to open up questions again at the end. So in the meantime, if you do think anything, put in the chat box and we can save it up to the end. Okay, so back over to you, Richard.
Okay, right. Well, thank you, Janet, for you know, a very clear presentation. There's no way that I could communicate so clearly. I don't have a background like Janet does in ecology, but I have spent a lot of time learning over the last year or two. My role has really been to run the SEED project, of which Biodiversity Index has been part of it, and I'm just going to share my desktop now. Okay. Yeah, so here we go. Right, I will assume that that's okay, and Lisa, if it isn't, please speak up.
Yeah, I can see that perfectly. That's fine. Just at the bottom again that we're missing.
So yeah. My role has really been to sort of steer this project in the right direction, and we didn't want it to just be a type of research project. We wanted it to become a useful tool so as many people as possible could use it. We were originally thinking of universities and other educational organisations, including colleges and schools, in fact, to use it. So we've made it as interactive and colourful as possible. And we've also tried to make it, to add in elements that are more corporate, so to put a professional reporting as well. But I will show you this as I go through it. Now I have already sort of logged on to this, but I'm just going to log out just to show you the landing page. So this is the landing page. I'm showing you on a laptop, so I have to sort of scroll down to show you the bottom of it. I think if you open this on a desktop, partly depending on your screen size, you'll get the whole picture just on your without having to scroll. But you can see there we've got a very simple definition of what biodiversity is. We are aiming this tool at people that don't necessarily have a background in ecology, so it's for non-experts. We've got some information on the start here on the landing page, just explaining some facts about biodiversity, and just to try and communicate how important it is to, not just to the life of the planet, but to human life on the planet. We are dependent on pollinating insects for a huge amount of our food, as you can see there from that statistic. And there's also, there have been attempts to try and value things like pollination and other ecosystem services in financial terms. And there's a lot of interest in that at the moment. It's quite a difficult thing to do, precisely, but there are some attempts, and I've put some information on there about it, and some information about the McKinsey survey, just showing that businesses, they are interested in biodiversity. Right, well, just going to the site, there is some information on how it works. By clicking these buttons, it will give you a sort of overview of what the site will do. So as Janet was saying, it will help you to do a vegetation for the structure survey, a leaf shape count, and also to measure habitats. But I'm just going to log in now. So if you're doing this for the first time, you'll actually go into a sign-up page, which will it will require you to actually put your personal details in, your name, your organisation's name, your email address. As Janet said, if you've got an ac.uk email address, it will automatically allow you into the site. If you don't have that address, you won't be able to gain access to the site at this point in time. Schools that end with .sch, .uk, .sch.gov.uk will be able to get on. And other schools that don't have that, they can email me. There's a little link to send me a message, and I can have them to do access. But yeah, you just log on. So email address, just show you there, and then we'll be asked to, and then you'll log on to the main sort of page. So the first time you use this, you won't have any reports. I mean, I've obviously created a few reports here already with different organisations. But to get started, one of the first things you'll do is actually, you'll go onto Bing Maps. There's a sort of explanation of getting started in this little box here. You'll click onto Bing Maps, or you can go to the instruction video to start with, which I'm not going to show you all of this because obviously it's a fairly long video, but it just explains to you how the actual site works. This is sort of what I'm doing for you now, but there is a recorded, it's about 10 minutes long. You can always fast forward through parts of it if need be. But we're actually going to go to Bing Maps just to show you how to sort of start a survey. The first thing you'll do is basically type in either your town name or your postcode into Bing Maps. I've zoomed in here into Telford, which is where we did a survey recently with Rico's UK manufacturing plant. And as you can see, it's quite a big factory facility, but it's also got quite a lot of green space. Now, you don't have to have a lot of green space to do a survey. You might have a small space. We've also done a survey of their office in Northampton, which has a very small green area. But this tool still enables you to survey it. So just to start with, what you'll actually do is zoom into the site, and we would ask people to take a sort of a print off, maybe a colour image of their site, which they can then use to walk around the site using a habitat survey form, which looks like this. So just come on. Again, this is something you could print off. You can, if you have an iPad, you could actually walk around and you could enter the details onto the website. If you haven't, you can print this off, and it just explains as clearly as possible. You know, we spent a lot of time designing this form and trying to make it very easy to understand. So this is the form that you'll walk around your site with, and you'll start to identify different habitats. Now we've divided the number of habitats into 21 different habitat types, which is a sort of scientific division. You can go further than 21, but you know, we need to make it as accessible as possible. So we decided that 21 covers the main types of habitats that you get in the UK. So on this form, as well as just showing you how to use it at the start and where you enter figures, you then have these different habitat types. We've got pictures of each different habitat again, just to make it easy to identify. So you've got woods and woodland parks, which there's a small description there, densely wooded areas, groups of trees, several trees grouped together but not wooded, rows of trees, etc. Single trees, hedges and shrubbery, deadwood, short grass, tall grass. So 21 different habitat types. And the idea is you will walk around your site with that habitat survey form, and you'll start to identify different habitats. So if you're walking around this area, you'll think, well, that's a short grass ornamental lawn area. And to decide whether it's what it is exactly, you think, well, you know, is it short grass or is it ornamental lawn? The short grass is non-manicured lawn with weeds, etc. And ornamental lawn is close manicured lawn. So if you're mowing it, you know that it's basically close manicured. So this area here, for example, it's quite easy to identify, you know, for a non-expert, that it's ornamental lawn. Whereas this area here, which is like a wooded area, you just, you know, whilst you're there on the ground, you'll determine whether you think it's a densely wooded area or whether it's a group of trees. In this case, it was like a densely wooded area. And it's the same for hedges and other areas. And you can see here you've got, zoom in there, you've got a line of trees, and here you've got like a group of trees. Yeah, these are relatively straightforward to identify, which is how we try to keep the survey. So, you know, once you've identified that's what that habitat is, you'll then just mark out what number it is, and you can mark out on your map the number, and then you just determine approximately what percentage is high trees, low trees, bushes, tall grass and herbs, short grass and herbs, or other ground flora. There are, you know, more detailed descriptions of these on the website, but you have fairly, you know, you've got brief descriptions here as to what these things are. And we're just expecting people to approximate what percentage of that habitat is these different vegetation structures, and just write them into these boxes. So you can see from the example here, you know, in this particular example, area 1 that was surveyed is 100% high trees, and then a leaf count is done for the different number of leaf types in that habitat. So you just walk around and identify the different number of leaf types. So you don't need to understand what the different trees are, you just need to count the different number. And it's the same for other leaf shapes, you know, different types of grasses or clover in the grass. It's quite easy to count the number. You then, once you've done that for your whole site, so you've walked around it, you've walked around the whole site, and you've completed the habitat survey form. It'll obviously be full of your scribbles by the time you've done that. You then come back to the website, and you'll enter a report name. So you can call it new survey. So it's Bristol University or something. You then create a report, and you then start to add your habitat area. So all you're doing here is you're entering data from the habitat survey form. So you'll choose, you know, the first area that you surveyed. It could have been wood or a woodland park. You enter that in. You will need to enter the area in feet squared, which I will come to in a moment. But you'll then just enter the data that you've noted on site from these drop-down boxes. So, as I've said, we're not expecting an extremely accurate approximation. There are 20% bands to put this in. So this is just an example. And then the number of leaf shapes present. So if you, for example, put in this case 25 to 30. And then to get the area, this is where you go to Bring Maps, and you use, there's a little tool, which is just on the My Places tab. And you can see here, where the hand is, if you click on this, this should open up a facility on there just to basically draw around a habitat. So if you draw around this group of trees here, you literally just drag the cursor and click, and then you double click the last one. You have to name it. And then you save that, and then it will actually, as soon as you do that, it will tell you what the feet squared is. You then enter that data into here. So it was 5,149, and then you just save that. You just save the information. Now our tool will automatically recalculate that into meters square. And you repeat what I've just done there for each of your habitats. And you will then continue to result. If I continue to result with this, then we're just going to get one habitat on there, but I'll just show you. It's going to be 100% woods and woodbine parks in this case. But there are lots of other habitats we can see them. And to move along, you can either scroll with your mouse, or you can just pull the little ladybird on the little twig at the bottom, and you can move along to look at the different habitats. I'm just going to go back to reports just to show you a report that I've done earlier, which is we recently did a survey of the reclaimed type of plant. So if I just show you the results of that. So this was a live survey. It was 15% woods and woodland park, 2% groups of trees, 4% rows of trees. So you can see very quickly out of your total area that you've surveyed, what percentage is made of these different habitats. And if you click on the information button, it will then give you a breakdown of, first of all, it will tell you what the area size is of that type of habitat in meters squared, and it will tell you approximately what percentage with high trees, what with bushes, what with tall grasses and herbs. It leaves your vegetation structure, and also it will give you some general advice on how you can improve that type of habitat, and also some further reading links. For further advice, with some contact information for getting in touch with us here at the university. It's the same for each of these habitats. There's different information on how you might improve that habitat. So as you can see there, there's some suggestions. Try and connect hedgerows to create corridors for animals to move along. If possible, trim every 2 to 3 years only. So just some suggestions and explaining why you might do that with some further reading links to different organisations. So if I move along this, you'll come to the far right-hand side of this results page, and this gives you your index score. And as Janet's explained, this provides a numerical value to the diversity of habitats on your site, and it's something for you to use as a baseline from which to improve. So by following some of the advice on there, and you might get more advice either externally or by following some of the web links which are on there, you could make some changes and improvements to different habitats. You'd survey again in, say, a year's time, and you should see your score improve. There's also a full report for you to download. And this is for any organisation. But we partly put this together thinking companies might find this very interesting to put into their CSR report. So it's an introduction to biodiversity, what the main drivers are, as well as the features and the benefits of this particular biodiversity index tool. Why you might want to assess and manage biodiversity, so that there's certain legal compliance for public sector organisations and CSR for other organisations. And then you've got your results summary. And so, you can print this off or you can save it on your computer. It gives you a very clear overview of what you have on your site. It is interactive as well if you keep it online. And then you also can drill down into your average habitat area patch size, which can be important for you to help you manage your site. And for each habitat you've entered information for, it will give you an overview, which you can see, which I've just showed you online, but this is a downloadable version with the advice for each of those habitats. So it's a good sort of summary that you can have on file. And at the end of here, we have, you can write down to the bottom, some extra useful links. This is interactive if you keep it online. So if you click onto these, then you will go through to those websites. And then if you want to give us some feedback, there's a feedback page. You click on there and you can give us some feedback. And again, you can get hold of us. We've left the email address on the end there. So, that's really, I think that's really it. I hope I've explained that fairly well, but if I stop, okay, all right, okay. So look, I can, if you have any questions that you want to either text through or speak, then I'll leave Lisa to manage that for you.
Yeah, everyone, if you, to get your chat box back up, if you go up to the green box at the top where it says viewing Richard Moore's application, and then just a little thing will come down, and just to the right of centre, you just click on the chat box there, and we'll bring up the window onto your screen. So if you do have any questions, please start typing them in there now, or if you'd like to ask it live and you have a phone or a mic, just say yes and I can unmute you. But thank you, Rich, that was fantastic. I think it's great to see a tool like this that captures all that information, but also offers tailored suggestions for improvement as well based on the score. How long did it take you to put this all together?
I would say this has taken about 18 months from start to finish.
Wow.
We sort of identified that we wanted to do some sort of biodiversity tool. But we've ended up with something that that we've honed over the last 18 months, just to make it as colourful, interactive, and useful as possible. So it could have quite easily been more of a sort of spreadsheet kind of tool, but then you don't really have people using it. So we'll try to sort of broaden it out so it's actually.
I think we need to give credit to the web developers as well for helping make the graphics so useful.
Yeah. It's really important for kind of using it also as an engagement tool. So when you are perhaps using this in lectures and workshops, it allows you to see very clearly what you're talking about, and it looks so fantastic and interesting. And biodiversity is quite simply that. It's fantastically engaging for people. So I think it definitely does both jobs. Just a quick question there from Sarah Johnson. She's asking, what does the numerical score mean? Is it higher the better?
Yes, the higher you go. So if you end up with a low score, then it's not really telling you very much. But it means you can increase your score. That's what we're aiming for. So even if for index 2 on the screen of 85, it's the baseline. So there could be a series of initiatives done by this particular organisation. They could expand their woodland cover, they could convert the group of trees to some woodland, they could change their grass cutting regime from short grass to tall grass periodically, they could introduce a wild flower meadow seed mix to increase the number of leaf shapes. So it's a baseline benchmark that you can say, right, this is where we are, and where, what can we do to improve the score?
Is the score out of 100?
No.
No.
What's
I mean,
the maximum?
Maybe I can just add to what Janet's just said. I mean, we've done surveys of a number of different sites now, and like 85 from my experience so far is quite a good score, or it's quite a high score. A lot of sites would have a lower score, but that's because they'll have a small, they'll have fewer habitats, and the habitats might not be quite as developed as this particular site.
It depends on the site as well. How much habitat you might have on your site footprint depends on how big that site is. There's also the area measurement which goes into the score. Say the bigger your habitat, the better it is. So don't get too hung up about what that score means, because it will be different for every site and a different message will be get out of it. The biggest initiative really is to actually say, right, this is what we've got, how can we make it better?
Okay, great. Just another question coming through from Rosie. She says the tool looks fantastic, but she's asking if there's anything for specific species. For example, she has a lot of badgers on site, and she'd like to introduce some beehives as well. Is there any way you can incorporate information on species?
Yeah, well, the tool is just incorporating vegetation at the moment. We may in the future perhaps even look at developing tools for invertebrates or mammals. But really I think that the habitat is important for badgers per se. So it's about knowing the site and what we've got in terms of habitat is a starting point. And then you can go to somewhere that has more expertise, so the Wildlife Trust or a badger organisation, to say, well, how can we make things better for our badgers? And badgers need grasslands to forage on. They like worms and they like berries and they like food to store up for winter. So you can plant trees that actually provide food for badgers to feed off. And so it's a starting point to say, well, how can we actually make this better for biodiversity?
I think the other thing, I mean, we've sort of spoken about this internally at the university, about what further developments we can add to the site, and we do have plans to add a feature where you can certainly take photographs with our GPS tag of plants or animals on your site, but also like a sort of you can log the different animals on your site, so that you've at least got a log as to what you've got on there. And you can put,
it could be in the report. Yeah.
And you can put the date on that you spotted it.
Okay, great. Just a couple more questions. Mike's asking, does the tool give points for the connectivity of habitats?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, and Sarah just wants to clarify. So back to the original other question about the index score. If does your score increase if you go back into survey and update all the data input boxes, or is it better to run a fresh new report?
I think you need to do a fresh new report. So it'd be like an annual report or a biannual. I don't know how often people want to do it. But the score won't change unless there's been a change in area of the habitat, or whether you've increased the diversity of leaf shapes, or you've increased the complexity of that habitat structure with layers of bulk structure as well. So you have to think about how the score is being formulated and calculated for that score to increase. But there are other measures that won't affect the score. So if you, for instance, included bird boxes or bat boxes, then that won't actually make your score go down. But you have improved the biodiversity potential of these sites. So all these need reporting, but it won't affect the score.
No. And we sort of looked at that quite closely because obviously, you know, we want to somehow reward the score for organisations that are, you know, adding things like bat boxes and bird boxes. But if we increase the score because of that, it'll be inaccurate, because just because you've got a bird box or a bat box doesn't mean to say you've got birds or bats in it. However, we will find a way. We're just sort of developing a way, disagreeing on it, how we're going to note down that you've added that.
So we have to be aware of not the limitations of the school, but what the school's been designed to do. It's about sort of raising these questions about how we can improve biodiversity.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions we've got so far. So I just wanted to say thank you for both of you for sharing that with us. I think everyone would agree these comments we've got so far have been that it looks fantastic, and will hopefully give institutions a really good way forward for collecting all of this information. So obviously this webinar is being recorded, so if you do want to share it with your colleagues, please have a look on the website in a couple of hours. All the links to the Biodiversity Index will all be on there, so you can go and have another look around the site, get into contact with Richard and Janet, and maybe have a bit more of a talk with them specifically about your institution. I don't know, I'm sure both of you were welcoming that. So thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar. We'll be sending you the survey out shortly, so do let us know what you think and any other ideas, whether it be anything else about biodiversity you're interested in, or anything else, please do let us know. So thank you very much for your time, and have fun in the sun. It's lovely here. We'll see you all on the next webinar.
And also, please send us feedback. Those of you that use the tool, you know, we do appreciate feedback. Thank you.
Great. Okay, you can either send that to Richard, or you know, put that in the survey, and we'll send that on to Richard and Janet so they can collect all that information in the future. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.